Okay. So my name is Jesse Rook. I'm the pastor of Port Colden United Methodist Church. I've been the pastor here for about 16 months now. I was appointed in July of last year and have been with this church ever since, and it's been really great so far. It's interesting when you come into this space. It does prevent you from thinking about what is outside of these walls. The stained glass windows are very well situated that at eye level that you cannot see anything outside of these walls. And even for some of the empty spaces, the stained glass window that they have in there is still it's still a blue or a green or a cloudy window. That all you can think when you come in here is to look at these windows, is to think of these stories or these scriptures or just how pretty they are. And that's all you think of when you come in, especially when you think straight forward, right behind the pulpit, right behind the Lord's table, at the very center of the sanctuary is a floating Jesus, either during ascension after his resurrection, or its transfiguration while on the mountain with his disciples. There are different interpretations based on that, but either way, again, it's still a white German Jesus that you see floating above the altar, floating above the congregation, standing there looking at us, beckoning at us. And so it's interesting to look at all of these windows, to think about the specific biblical stories that are seen, to think of all the nature that we see in them, visions of gardens and of lakes, pictures of scenes where we see nature. We see a lot of flowers. We see some wildlife in the little butterfly we saw before, a handful of angels, many Jesuses, a couple of laity, the couple sitting on the picnic blanket, the children, the individual who's standing at the church. Does it point us toward heaven? Does it make us think of heaven, or does it make us think of our Sunday school teachings? Does it make us think of teachings and of teachers in our history that we think of these, we see these stained glass windows and we think about where we've come from? We think about the stories that we've been heard. We think about the hymn, "On a hill far away stood that old rugged cross." Do we think about the crosses and those who have passed, or do we only think about the scenes that we are seeing? For me, every time I see that stained glass window of the harp, all I can fixate on is the notes that do not work. All I can see is a hymn that doesn't go anywhere. But when I see floating Jesus up top, when I see Jesus in all of his majesty, I question, what is he doing up there for us? Is he taking care of us? Is he keeping a watchful eye for us? Is he waiting for us? It's interesting that all of these stained glass windows were donated for people who have passed on. Each one of them are in memory or loving memory of an individual. Every single one of these, whether it was donated from the family or from the congregation, each one of these stained glass windows has someone's soul associated with them. And so when we are sitting here in these pews, when we are looking at Jesus who is in the heavens above us, we are reminded that all of those who came before us, all of those who are surrounded us, are part of the great cloud of witnesses. that they are the ones who paid for these pews, that they are the ones who put their time and their effort and their blood and sweat into these pews and into this church, and now are feasting at the heavenly banquet with Jesus. That we are surrounded by saints of the church, and I mean that in the fullest sense of the word for some of the names that we see on these windows. Saints of the church who gave everything they could for Port Colden United Methodist Church, who found ways to support the church, who gave of their time and gave of their witness and gave of their money and gave of their lives for this church. And we sit in these pews and we hear the music on the piano and we hear the sermon on Sunday morning, and we are surrounded by our friends and by our family. We are surrounded by those who came to this church and who led for many of us sitting in the pews. Are we reminded of them so that we can smile for a brief moment? Or are we reminded of them so maybe we can emulate them? Maybe we can strive to be the kinds of saints for this church that they were for us. Maybe we one day can have a window in our honor. That's not the goal. That's not what we're trying to do. But maybe we need to look at a picture in a stained glass window of Orville and remember all that he gave to this church, even when he came at a fundraising dinner and went home at the end of it and passed away that very night. Selfless giving, the kind that Anna Mary Allen gave as she was treasurer for the church for so many years. All the different families, all the different individuals we see here, yes, they were loved by their family, but they were also loved by their church. And so we sit here among all of these stained glass windows. We sit here and cannot see outside of these walls for an hour once a week. And all we can do is look forward and look at Jesus in glorious heaven and smile because our friends and our family are with him. They are with him, and whether the stained glass window stories are biblical or hymnal or purely just a pretty painting and a pretty picture that we can look at for an hour, they remind us of the sacrifices our brothers and sisters and family members have made for this church. They remind us that we should do likewise, that we should stand up and volunteer, that we should stand up and take ownership, that we should find a way to give back to this church the way that those who came before us, but also to give back to our community, to give back to our families, to give back to our community that has raised us and has put us in this place and at this time, that we can strive to be like them. And so do these stained glass windows make us think heavenward or make us think earthly? I think that answer is yes. I think we look both toward heaven and both toward the great cloud of witnesses that surround us. And we also look that as soon as we leave this room, as soon as we leave this sanctuary, that we go back out into that world, we know that we are doing so as a people who have been changed by God. People who have been loved by God and saved by God, but also taught to go out and to make a difference. That is who these windows are for. That is whose honor and memory they were donated in. Were those who went out in the name of Methodism, who went out in the name of Port Colden, who went out in the name of Jesus and made a difference, whether it was to their families, to their church, or to the community. And so we sit here and we remember those who came before us.